Hi, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good evening to everyone. And of course, I would not be South African if I did not greet you all this evening with a very nice how's it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ladies and gents, today we are here to celebrate International Women's Day. My name is Hawa Shafare. I am the CEO of Obrix UAE and also the CEO of Training Excellence South Africa. I am also on the board of various organizations, one which is ESSH Holdings, and the director of Hadirat Global in Bosnia and in UAE. So welcome to every one of you. And those of you who have just joined us, you are now joining and listening live to an audio stream with Salam Media. And if you'd like to join, please go to www.salammedia.com, listen live, and please join us now to be able to come in onto the live session if you would like to join, and not only on YouTube. You can also join via www.facebook.com, Salam Media. We are also on Twitter. Please watch out for our tweets that are going out. Salam Media on Twitter, Salam Media on air, on Instagram, and on YouTube, search for Salam Media. And now that we got all the formalities out of the way, ladies and gents, I'd like to start off by firstly looking at what we're going to be talking about here today. We know that in the last 2 days, everybody has been celebrating International Women's Day. So what is that all about, and what are we going to be doing here today? I want to take it from a completely different angle. My focus tonight is purely to look at how do we understand or get into the understanding of the wisdom, the insights, the trials, the tribulations, the laughter, the joy, the encouragement, everything to do with the success of some amazing women who we have as guests here today. In my 25 years of leadership and in my 25 years of business development, I have learned that leadership is far beyond the task, the productivity, the profits. It's far beyond that. That's all we see on the outside. You know, it's about this iceberg, and all we see is the top part of the iceberg, but we don't really see what's happening at the bottom part of that iceberg, especially when it comes to women in business, because women are so good at wearing our masks, right? And that is why some of us actually enjoyed wearing this mask that you see here today. And that is because we hide behind the true energy of where we actually became. We're sometimes too modest about what we do and how we actually function. But tonight, I'm going to ask our ladies to really let their hair down. I'm going to ask the ladies to really remove that mask and to talk to me from here. This is not about just productivity in business. This is about you talking to me from here today. International Women's Day for me is all about the perseverance, the self-mastery that we have to dig deep inside to find out how did we actually get to where we are today. And I believe that the right journey is the ultimate destination. The most prolific and beneficial experience in life is not in achieving something you want, but in actually seeking it. And I think the key word here, ladies and gents, that we're going to look at here tonight is about actually seeking it. What are we seeking? It's the journey towards an endless horizon that matters, goals and dreams that move forward with you as you chase them. It's all about meaningful pursuits. And ladies and gents, for me tonight, that meaningful pursuits, the word meaningful is very critical. So what we want to look at is, instead of actually pouring knowledge into people's heads, tonight it's about looking at a new set of eyeglasses. I want all of us, and I see some of our guests that are here today, there's at least all of you, most of you, that are actually wearing your eyeglasses here tonight. And it's all about, instead of pouring this knowledge, I want you to start to look at the need of our audience and our listeners here tonight, especially me. I'm one of your biggest fans here tonight. And what I'd like to look at is the new set of eyeglasses that you're going to allow me to see and view my life through. And what lens are you going to allow me to see through at the moment? So removing that mask, taking the mask away and becoming the true authentic you. Those of you that know me, you know whenever I speak about leadership from authenticity. And that's what tonight's leadership is all about, is leading through authenticity. So I'd like to introduce our speakers here tonight, who's going to allow us to see our mask, or remove our mask and see the true world through a completely different lens. And my first speaker that I would like to introduce here tonight is Ms. Rahima Isa. Ms. Rahima Isa is not just the co-founder of Oya, Chief Curator Womenomics Africa, but she's a woman of substance that I have learned to get to know on a very personal level over the last few years. Someone who I can always pick up a phone and call and say, Rahima, I need support in an XYZ position. And she's been there for me in many ways. So Rahima is a seasoned business strategist. She's a leadership development coach and a social impact entrepreneur. She's co-founder of Oya, a boutique strategy advisory firm. Oya Foods, an agri-business, and I love this. She's in agri-business, ladies and gents. Very rare that you find women in agriculture, but she's an agri-business aggregator and processing enterprise linking women in the agri-business sector to market and Womenomics Africa, charting economic highlights which traverse geopolitical boundaries, connecting women in Africa to entrepreneur ecosystems. And for me, that keyword there is ecosystems, because it's very rare in businesses you find ecosystems, development partners, and business opportunities, facilitating intra-Africa trade. So welcome, Rahima, and thank you for joining us here today.
Hawa, and to your listeners, wow, what an amazing introduction and an invitation for us to get a little bit naked and take off our masks in an era where we keep.
Okay, so we seem to have lost Rahima there for a second. Rahima, I'm sure the network will come back to you. So Rahima, we look forward to having you back. While we're trying to get you back at the moment, we're going to move over to Rahima. Are you back? I can see you back.
Yes, I am back.
Great, fantastic.
Can you hear me? We seem to be having.
Yes.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Okay, fantastic. I'm looking forward to taking off the mask, keeping it off for this conversation. After a year of wearing a mask everywhere we go, it's a bold and beautiful opportunity to take it off and to keep it off and have a frank conversation. So what a pleasure, a delight, and an honor to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rahima. Our next speaker I'd like to introduce is, I'm going to move to Ms. Charlotte. Ms. Charlotte du Plessis, who is the founder and CEO of Women of Stature, a proudly South African organization with a vision to be one of South Africa's leading network organizations. I am honored to have met Charlotte a good few years ago and worked with her on a very personal level on various projects. And I must admit that she has been my inspiration to actually take women leadership to a completely different level. So Charlotte, it's an honor to have you here with us today. Through Women of Stature, Charlotte has spearheaded the formation of life-changing programs. She has seen many women, and I know I've witnessed this, where she has been able to work through with them to transformation and become successful in their personal and professional lives. The bravery of her late mother, who was also diagnosed with breast cancer, and something very personal that Charlotte has shared in her profile. And that's why I know it's okay to share, because here we are, like we say, we're really getting naked. And I like the word, Rahima, although I'd like us to still keep our clothes on, that her mum has actually been diagnosed with breast cancer at 65 and succumbed to lung cancer at 75, was her inspiration to start the organization in the first place. Very heartfelt. And here you have already someone who's taking off the mask to say, here's my inspiration. She is now planning the 7th annual Women of Stature Awards in South Africa and the first Global Women of Stature Awards in Dubai 2021, which I'm honored to be working with you on, Charlotte, in Dubai. So once again, Charlotte, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, there we go. Well, first of all, thank you very much, Hawa. You know, it's always a pleasure to be in your company. And this evening, I'm particularly honored to be in the company of such greatness. You know, I always count my blessings and I always count myself lucky when I am in the company of great women and great leaders, each and every one of you. And thank you for that introduction. And yes, it's a very heartfelt introduction because, you know, when you don't ever realize until you lose a parent what that parent really has meant to you. And my mother was my role model. She was such a lady. If you were to have met her, the one thing that would have stood out is her tremendous ability to make everybody feel so comfortable around her. And she also believed in the lipstick parade, or should I say, yeah, the lipstick. Always had the lipstick on, always had the earrings on, and I guess that's where I also, you know, learned that if anything, always make sure that you look presentable wherever you go. But I'm so honored to meet you all, and I really am looking forward to this discussion tonight. And yes, I hope I can be as authentic as possible in your company.
Thank you, Charlotte. You've already done the honor of being authentic right from the beginning. So welcome and thank you very much for sharing that with us. Our next speaker that I'd like to introduce now is Dr. Maayan Razlan. She is the Vice President at Speedo Trans Company for Power and Environment Consultations. She is also the past District Governor and Rotary Public Image Coordinator of Zone 22 Africa. I must admit, Dr. Maayan, today when your profile crossed my desk, I was really impressed with how much of work and effort. And I honestly wonder, and that will be a question for later, but I honestly wonder how and where do you get the time to juggle whatever you are juggling? Dr. Maayan is the first woman to be named Governor of the Rotary District in 2016-2017 by election in Egypt, and she's the Middle East in the Middle East in 1929. The region has almost 2,500 members, out of which 128 Rotary clubs. And I must admit, the first time I got introduced to this was through Shireen, who I will be introducing later, and really impressive in terms of your designation. So Regional Coordinator of the Rotary Foundation for Communication and Public Relations Africa, 2017-2023, Chairman of the Committee for the Sustainable Development Project in Rotary, Chairperson of the Women's Committee of Canadian Egyptian Business Council. And ladies and gents, I can actually go on and on with some of the credentials we have, but I'll just mention the last few things in terms of members of boards, the Egyptian Automobile and Touring Club, the Charitable Foundation, which is Oman, the Arab Women Association, and the Arab Women Business Council. But also more importantly, just on a more humanitarian perspective, just two things that are important for me that I also read off, and that is that she participates in annual campaigns to eradicate polio, the profession for women, providing assistance to small and medium enterprises by even providing small loans. And I think that's one of the biggest problems in, many business owners have, is to be able to get investment. So well done, Dr. Maayan, and thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you so much, Hawa, and thank you very much for reading all these information and this bio, which you do not need to trouble all our lovely, beautiful ladies. I'm very happy that my friend, District Governor Anne, has introduced me to Shireen, who has recommended me to you, because it was a short notice, but I was so excited to meet a lot of beautiful models and very successful women, as we have in our panel today, because these examples it's so important to always remind ourselves how hard we work and how important to tell our stories to the people. We have to tell our stories to other generations, to younger generations, to our daughters, to our granddaughters, because they have to keep fighting. We have achieved a lot. We have fought a lot, but we still have some fighting to do to be on the right track. And it's not only to be on the right track, but also to sustain this track. To sustain this track, we need to have our younger generation. So thank you very much, and it's all inspiration to be with these beautiful models, ladies.
Thank you, Dr. Mayan. And you said something that is really heartfelt there. It's about sharing stories. And that's what today is about. It's about sharing the stories, but not just the stories of, our business successes or our business trials and tribulations, but really the deep down stories that some of us have never told. So like we said, we're going to get a little bit more in depth today. So thank you very much, Dr. Mayan. I'd like to now go into introducing Ms. Alia Zafar, all the way from Pakistan, who's joining us. And for those of you who don't know, what I did not mention earlier is Dr. Mayan, who just spoke earlier. She's all the way from Egypt. And of course, Dr. Alia is from Pakistan. So moving on to Dr. Alia, and also once again, Dr. Alia, thank you so much for accommodating us at this short notice. But Dr. Alia is group head of People and Organizational Excellence at the BOP, that's Bank of Punjab. She's a member board of governors for Pakistan Cricket Board. And that, I think, for me already, when I read that on the profile, I thought in Pakistan, we have a woman on the board of the Pakistan Cricket Board. That alone blew me away. So well done. Thank you, Ms. Alia. Alia is the first independent female to be appointed, by the way, in PCB in the Board of Governors, and also 26 years of experience as a civil servant, national and international corporate development sector, and of course, the public sector. In 2020, Alia was appointed as Human Resource Executive at the Bank of Punjab in Board of Directors in the process of becoming the first woman here. Listen to this. The first woman, and for me, this is big, especially from Pakistan, the first woman in its 59 years of history. So already, Dr. Ms. Alia, you've actually made huge success in that. And the one thing that stood out for me in your profile, and I'd like to read this out, is that in an interview, Alia said, "I feel very honored and happy to be part of history in making." She also said that "I'm also the first female cricket director in this region, and that will surely serve, and I hope serve as an inspiration for all women around the world." Alia said she would use a presence to create a sense of empowerment for women. She said she would work towards developing women cricket in Pakistan. Alia, thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And I think I'm humbled really by the presence of such wonderful leaders around me right now. I hope to learn a lot in this conversation. And essentially, I think when we women as a panel of women, when I look at that, I'm just reminded that we need to connect more and more and support each other more and more wherever we are. And that's one of the major challenges I also see, not just in organizations, but even outside organizations. So essentially, wherever we are, we really need to pull up rather than push down, women around us. And that hopefully can take us forward.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Alia. And I'm sure we're going to get to how do we do that, because we were pushed down many times as well, and getting to the root of what that actually did to us, but how we don't let it happen over and over again. So thank you very much. And of course, last but not least, I'd like to introduce an amazing woman who I've just got to know over the last year. But I must say that the impact that she has had on my career, and not only my career, but also in my personal life, has been tremendous. And that is none other than Shireen Hunter, who is an amazing woman, Sister Shireen. She's the CEO and owner of the Hunters Group, Fitment and Unleashed Combat Sports and Events. Shireen is a highly skilled in strategic brand management, commercial relationship building, and leadership. She is an experienced businesswoman with over a success of 25 years track record. So, Sister Shireen, we're not going to ask you to say your age, because then I'll be asking me to put myself in that position as well. So her first tertiary ambition manifested in 1993 when she qualified as a Rotary Exchange, so another Rotary member. When she qualified as Rotary Exchange student representing South Africa on a long-term exchange program in Australia. So that goes way back, Shireen. And I'm sure since from then till now, there's a lot of stories that you can actually say. You are the shareholder of Beata Promotional Printers and Women of Stature Network International, and a turnkey brand management agency, African Brand Architects. And Shireen also sits on the board of two non-profit companies, namely It's Not All About Me, and I love that name, and Gauteng Boxing Promoters Association. So well done and welcome. Thank you, Shireen, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Sister Hawa. You know, for me, it's just so exciting because when I sit in this room, be it virtual, I feel like I'm sitting with friends already. You know, I found a common denominator amongst the most successful business women in the world, and that is that we care about people and we care about each other. And I think, you know, that's the platform that we all come off of, and it's the heart that we all share. So for me to be able to engage in this conversation, you know, iron sharpens iron, and to impart what little I've learned, I'm pointing to the, you know, the latter half of my 40s and closer towards the 50s, and, you know, very proud of what I've learned over the last 3 decades in business. I mean, you know, our wrinkles are our story, and we should be proud of it. And the wisdom that we've been able to accumulate over a lifetime, we're so blessed to have this knowledge and to be able to share it. And the other thing that really excites me is that through this whole lockdown crisis, how it's opened borders, these virtual meeting rooms and virtual boardroom tables, how it's allowed us to connect from one side of the African continent to the other. I mean, I'm just so excited to have Dr. Razvan in the room, who's in Egypt. I mean, never in my wildest dreams did I ever think, you know, a year ago or 2 years ago, I'd be sitting around a virtual meeting table with wonderful leaders from around the continent. So what an opportunity that has opened up for us, Sister Hawa. And thank you for taking my hand, and thank you for introducing me to your network. And it's been an absolute honor to take your hand and introduce you to my network. And, you know, that we would all go from glory to glory. You know, God is good.
And I think this is what it's about, ladies. It's about opening the networks that we have and opening up exactly how do we actually pull other women up, and not just other women, but even our male counterparts that are also struggling, because that's what leadership is. There is no gender. And somebody said this the other day, I think Charlotte on one of your talks, is there is no gender to leadership. And I think that's what our focus is going to be here today about. So I'd like to now get into the actual topics. I'll start with a very easy question to a few of you, and I'm going to get started. My first question I'd like to go is going to be addressed to basically everyone. And then we'll go in silence to different people with different topics. So I'd like to first start off by, let's start by first engaging in just 2 minutes. And I'm going to give you 2 minutes. And this is the only 2 minutes you're going to have where you can talk about yourself and your business. Talk about yourself and your success story, or how you actually got to where you were. So let's start by engaging for 2 minutes each, and I'm going to be timing you. So please keep bear in mind, we want to have some fun after this and really taking off those masks. So in your 2 minutes, I'd like you to share with me your insights of what led to your current destination. So we've got your overview, and the reason I also spend so much of time on your profile is that we got your overview of who you are, what you do in business, the impact you're having on different boards. But right now, I'd like to hear from you your insights of what actually led to your current destination. So let's start with Sister Shireen. Since you had your mic off earlier, let's start with you. Let's move on with you.
Okay, in 2 minutes, what led to my current destination? You know, I'd have to say passion. I think passion has definitely forged my path for me. I love building businesses, Sister Hawa. I wake up in the morning and I think about building businesses, and I go to bed at night and I think about building businesses. And building businesses for me has never really been a problem. I am one of those people who is really excited about finding the solution, because I know that in every business there are solutions. So my business, Hunter Group, is an agency that sources out professional skills. So whether it's marketing or financial support, HR support, that's what we do. We started off originally servicing small to medium-sized businesses, offering professional skills that they otherwise would not be able to afford because they were a small business. And then by word of mouth, that, you know, the organization grew and grew and grew, and we ended up with some really big clients who like to outsource their services, who might not necessarily want a professional skill set on their payroll, and who like, you know, fresh legs or new ideas. And so that's really how the business evolved. But I'd have to say that passion definitely is what led me to where I am today. And passion is definitely what keeps me where I am today. Because, you know, if you're not passionate about what it is that you do, I don't think that you can stay the course in the long term. So that's my little intro. I hope I've done that in 120 seconds.
Definitely on time. In fact, you've got more time, but I would actually then leave that to a later time for you. But you mentioned something about building businesses and ecosystems, and I just want to comment on that just before we move on to our next speaker. But that's what we talk about here, is this alone is an ecosystem of its own. You never know what can actually come out of this particular session. So, Sister Shireen, later on, I'd like you to elaborate on that when we do talk about what would prevent us from actually creating those ecosystems. But yeah, thank you very much, Sister Shireen, and welcome. Let's move over to Dr. Maayan. Let's hear from you. If you could actually tell us a little bit about yourself in that 2 minutes in terms of what actually led to your current destination.
Sure. To start with, I have to admit that being so young and seeing my mother as a role model, she has been the chairman and the leader of many of the NGOs associations in our country. I grew up with a lady that gave herself and her time, with a lot of time, to others, to serve others. As I grew up and I understood that our laws in the country, especially in the Arab countries, are not supporting the women so much as leaders in the public areas, as employees and as leaders. And when we go up back to the UN Women statistics, and we see that there are 50% of women in the world that are working as with wages less than 25% of the men. This has declined me a little bit of working as profession that belongs to other organizations, to other government organizations. So this put me on the track of having my own business, so that I can give up my own leadership pattern in my own way. And actually my husband has supported me greatly in that. To him, I was able to balance up my business life, my philanthropy life, and my family life. So when I saw all these circumstances in our society, that women are not taking the role as leaders enough, and also my mother has brought me up on giving and serving, I really had the passion. As Shireen said, it's a matter of passion. You have to love and like what you are doing. And this, when I started my NGO life, and I saw the happiness when I serve other people, and when I achieve the economical development and the growth of other human beings through the humanitarian projects that we provide, this is increasing in me more and more and more passion to be able to give to others. And that's why I excelled, and I joined a lot of NGOs to be able to give that way.
Great.
I think I finished the 2 minutes you wanted.
Yes, absolutely, on dot.
I can go on and on, but this is for the 2 minutes. Okay,
absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Maayan. And I could actually, let you go on and on to hear you. However, Dr. Maayan, you've mentioned something that was really critical there as well, that we want to be able to touch on a little bit there. And that is in terms of the difficulty in certain countries. So certain things that we here in South Africa, for example, are experiencing, you might experience very differently in Egypt. And of course, our next speaker will be Ms. Alia, who will then probably talk about something else that she's experiencing in Pakistan. But of course, you'll find that as you go around the world, the perception is that in many Arab countries as well, that there is, lack of interest for women on those particular boards. So later, when we move in towards the end of the discussion, I'd like to touch on that a little bit, as well as what is the perception of the world in terms of women as well. So let's move to our next speaker and give you your 2 minutes. Ms. Alia, are you online for you to come through to have your 2 minutes? Ms. Alia? Okay, so while we're waiting for her to reconnect again, I'm sure there's a bit of a complication. Charlotte, over to you. So to throw you right in the deep end.
Well, in 2 minutes, it's very hard because I love to talk a lot. But I think for me, it was building confidence. As a young girl, believe it or not, I did not have much self-esteem, and I did not have a lot of self-confidence. And the way that I tried to build my own self-confidence was through various activities. And one of them was community work. So I started to engage on different levels of community work, and it really translated into me realizing that when you're actually paying forward and you're actually making a difference in somebody else's life, it is actually transforming you as a human being, and you becoming more aware of a lot around you that you wouldn't necessarily be aware of. So what it is that I actually started to realize is that I wanted to build that same self-confidence in other women. And by doing that, I created a platform that mobilizes women and brings them forward out of maybe unconsciously they've been trapped and not able to get out and really take their masks off, as we are doing tonight. And I think for me, that's been the greatest achievement, is to see how women can be transformed if they're taken out of their comfort zone, or they're just given an opportunity to make a difference. And then making a difference in somebody else's life immediately has this effect of me feeling so much better about myself because I'm making somebody else feel good, or I'm doing something for somebody else. So I do believe that transformation is the key. And if we as an organization, I talk about Women of Stature as an organization, if we can transform a life, then we are already making, or we are already achieving a lot. So the life of a woman who is actually playing an integral and important role in society, in her family, in her community, and in the economy of the country in which she lives. If we can help to transform her and bring her to the realization of her actual value and worth, then I believe that I've definitely accomplished something.
Fantastic. Thank you, Charlotte. And I think some important points there, specifically around transforming women. And here's a question I want you to think about when you remove your mask just now, because perhaps later in that question or later you can actually highlight that is, do women really need transforming? If we are going to be transforming them, then which part do we transform and which part do we leave for them later? So just some thoughts I'd like you to think about, because I've had a few women who says, I've tried to go through and I said, hey, hang on, we need to transform women. And the question is, why do we need transforming? And Charlotte and I think know better than you to answer that question later for us. I would like you to think about that as well. I'd like to move over to Alia. Alia, thank you for joining us back again. So Alia, if you can give us an intro, your 2 minutes starts now.
Thank you. So I think, I was just trying to think while everybody else was talking, what has actually driven me to where I am. And I think a lot of it is really my own personality. I think I'm a fighter. I tend to persevere. I'm intrinsically motivated. And I've always wanted to evolve professionally. So that's why I've moved from the corporate, from the public sector to the development sector to the corporate. And what I've always wanted to do was really essentially have a more rounded professional experience. But beyond that, I think what has really helped me is that I'm essentially a giver, which essentially has meant that wherever I have worked, I've also been able to help people around me in whatever projects they were doing. A lot of times I would be doing that on top of what my own work requirement was at that time. So this essentially meant that I was loading work on myself, not being essentially paid for that extra work. And yet I think that attitude of mine over the years has really given me back so much more, not just in terms of the skills that I've gained, but also, I think good wishes and goodwill, and it's it's a positive energy which goes around and it comes back to you at the end of the day. So a lot of it, I think, has really essentially been about how I'm willing to help anyone and everyone who would not just approach me, but who's around me.
Lovely. Thank you, Ms. Alia. And, for me, you remind me so much about me giving and giving and giving. And I love the idea of giving. And perhaps something that when you to remove your mask later, I'd like you to think about is, how is that sometimes depleted you? I know for me, when I give and give and give, it's depleted me on so many levels that I had to actually sit back and look back and see, what do I actually do? Do I start to see to myself, or do I give in? But there are so many other women that handle it completely differently. And tonight's not about me. I'd like you to think about it and later perhaps let us know on that particular topic. Let's move to, last but not least, to Rahima Isa. And your 2 minutes starts now.
Thank you. Just unmuting myself. Thank you so much. What a beautiful question. And it has made me pause and reflect. I think what drives me is curiosity and pursuit of yes. And I have to say that, it takes me back to my childhood. I used to love reading. And I'd read into the early hours of the morning. Your parents would come and knock on the door because the lights are on. And I used to imagine what it would be like to stay under the covers and to read a book that nobody could see that I was reading. Fast forward to years later, we've got ebooks, right? And I used to imagine when it was cold. I lived in Botswana, and the winters are very cold. And I used to imagine what it would be like to be able to turn the pages without even having to move my hands and fingers, because that was my biggest issue. And now you've got virtual reality. And I think as an adult reflecting back, I think it's this curiosity about what is possible. So when I reflect now and looking at what has driven the companies that I have formed and been a part of, and with the most recent companies that I'm currently curating and in engineering, it really is about the possibilities. Audia was founded as a vehicle to channel energies and efforts towards connecting African women to each other, to opportunities, using and leveraging technology. This was way back in 2011, 2012. We were speaking to developers from China, from India, from the US, from Kenya, to get this technology on. Back then, nobody could imagine what it was. Come lockdown, we finally found the technology we were looking for because the environment was ready. So it's this curiosity about what is possible. Oya Foods was founded in an era of lockdown where essentially women farmers did not have access to markets. And the curiosity was, how do we find a different way? How do we get women farmers to do what they're doing, but to be part of an ecosystem? Oya Foods was born. Womenomics was also born out of a need and appreciation that some of the work we were doing, we were fighting battles that were more policy oriented, that were more geared towards large multinationals opening up, and therefore more advocacy oriented. So I think everything has been not about what is wrong, but what is the possible yes, and what is the work that we can do towards engineering that yes and giving effect to the yes that we wanted to see. 2 minutes?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Rahima. Well done. Rima, for me, what stood out there is curiosity. I can just picture you. The first time I saw you actually curate or moderate a session, you spoke about Mama Says. And I'll never forget that. And the curiosity of you sitting underneath the blanket and your mama actually looking out to find out what is Rahima actually up to. And knowing Rahima, she was already starting to think about the new business or the new idea or how is she going to help people. So I think that's very essential. Curiosity for me is what actually stood out there. Ladies, thank you very much. That was a great 2 minutes. And now we get into the actual hard talk in terms of what we're wanting to do here tonight. So I'm going to start off. Let's start off with Alia and let's put Dr. Mayan on the spot here as well. So if I had to ask you particularly, and this question is for both of you, but we'll go with Alia first, is what times in, when we see all of you, we see your success stories, we see what you've done, we see all of that. We don't see, like I mentioned, the below of the iceberg. So ultimately, what we want to now see is what times in your life really tested your mettle. And when I say tested your mettle, really tested that cringe where you got to a point where you said, that's it, I'm done, I give up. So what times in your life truly tested that? What did you learn from dealing with it or not dealing with it? I know there's a lot of stuff I still haven't dealt with. So what tested your mettle? How did you learn and deal with it or not deal with it? So Alia, let's go with you first.
Right. So I think there are two instances which come to my mind immediately. One is personal. I went through a divorce. And the other one is with one of the organizations that I was in. And there was a lot of politics within that organization. And it was up to an extent where it became a very toxic environment. So in any case, whenever you are actually faced with any kind of toxicity, what do you do normally? You tend to take a lot of stress on yourself. And initially I did. And then I think a lot of things actually helped me. One of the main things which helped me both in my personal and my professional life has been my faith in my God, of course, and in myself. And when you let a lot of things sort of create an environment around you, which are sort of generated by people who do not understand either your work, you. So if you give too much importance to it, it can sort of distract you from your own goals and focus. I did come across two of these very major incidents in my life where I did feel that, I was going to lose it, and yet I didn't. And I realized that when you cross that path and when you go over that journey, you realize that you have enough strength in yourself to actually handle anything and everything which comes your way. And you can do it alone. You really, sometimes you don't even have family around you or friends supporting you or colleagues helping you. And yet you can still do it. And when you do it, you realize...
Question, and sorry to interrupt you. What I'd like to get to is the how, because on our listenership right now, and I know that there's a lot of our speakers here as well that might be struggling not with the same, but with different issues. And we might sit back, especially those of us that have gone through it, and we said that we can actually manage it. But the question is how? How do you manage when you say, I can do it by myself? What is that turning point that allows you to get there to say that you can do it?
So I think very small things. It's like, there's nobody around to pat you on the back. So you say, okay, I'm doing well. I'm fine. This is great. Okay. And pat on my back. Okay, good. You've done this. And one step at a time. All right. You are spot on. You're going in the right direction. So you really sort of generate that positivity around yourself because there's nobody else supporting you. So you support yourself. And you do find that inner strength, but you have to reach out inside, and you have to also, I think, link with that feeling of love within you, that you love yourself enough to fight back. So I think it really connects with that.
Absolutely. And I get that. I get it. And there's a period of time. And I think every one of you here as a speaker, and please, if you'd like to come in, please don't wait for me to ask you. We're definitely not in a classroom situation. If you'd like to comment on this, if you've been through something similar as well, I'd like your comments. I'd like you to come in. But Alia, there's that bit of space in between that turning point, before you actually say, I can do this myself, I can give myself that pat on the back. How did that make you feel during that period of time when you were going through the divorce? You had to juggle your work, you had to juggle your career. I'm sure you even doubted, even though faith brought you out of it, but I'm sure there were times you might have even doubted yourself and even your faith.
Actually, I didn't. So that actually really helped me. So that really helped me. But more than that, I think that space where you feel you are maybe alone, and you are completely alone, and I was. And so you sort of reach inside and you introspect. You think, okay, what is the meaning of relationships? And how these relationships bring you a sense of fulfillment at times, some kind of social, sometimes moral support, sometimes psychological support. And at the end of the day, if it's not there, where do you find it? So there's a lot of introspection from that perspective. But yet, you do have to reach inside, because there is nowhere else you can reach out to except God. Of course, if you have that faith, you reach out to God, and there's no issue at all, because then you are never alone.
Absolutely.
So, but that's really how my faith would work for me. It may not work for everyone else, but that faith in yourself is also, I think, equally important. So if you're not a person of faith, you would still be a person of faith in yourself. That yes, I can overcome anything and everything. And there is a you see, there's a limit to a pain. There's a limit to grief, and when you reach that tipping point, and you hold on and you are steady, then you go up.
Absolutely. Alia, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I think looking at your career, looking at what you've done, looking at the point in your life that you are in at the moment, alhamdulillah, and I say mashallah, that and thanks to God that your faith is what held you through. So thank you very much for sharing that with us, and being, it's a very sensitive issue, and I really thank you for removing that mask and telling us a little bit about it. Dr. Marjan, if I can just go to you. Firstly, just a quick 30-second comment of what you thought about what Alia said, and can you resonate with that? And then most importantly, then go to the question which says that what times in your life truly tested your mettle, and how did you manage and deal with it?
I think I understand very much what Alia is saying. When there's no one to tap you around, or there are some people who taps you, but not in what you really need. Sometimes what you have inside you, what you do very much inside from pain or from pain and your need to energize yourself. Not a lot of people understand the degree you need. So when they give you the support, it's not what you really expect, but you have to take it as not to to embarrass them. But I do understand Dalia very much when she says this is a turning point in the person. Let me give you my turning point, and actually it's a couple, it's 2 or 3 stories, but I will try to put them so briefly because they are the 3 main turning points in my life.
Perfect. And give me one of the top ones, right on the top one.
The top one, well, actually there are 2 top ones. One is very personal, and one is very personal, and it is related to life, and the other one is related to my work and my esteem. Now, the first one started when maybe some people who are in touch with the Rotary life, they understand how is the Rotary system going. Now, the Rotary life was only for males. The females were not admitted. There were no women in Rotary until 1985, and then in 1985, when it was introduced in the United States, it did not come to our Arab world except in 1990s. Now, in Egypt, there had not been any women as a district governor, as a leader of this organization of more than 3,000 people. It has always been for the male. We have been established in 1929, and for 95 years, there had not been a woman. Now, when I applied to be elected, and my club has nominated me, I saw the real look of the man, and all the challenge and all the rejection that a woman can take this leadership position, because this is the first time in history in Egypt. I received a lot of the people whom I thought they were my friends, they turned not to be my friends, who wanted to compete with me and who used to support me before, they stopped supporting me. And I got a lot of complaints on me to the Rotary International, refusing a woman to be in this. I insist going on the elections, and I won the elections for the first time, and they made another complaint for the first time, and the Rotary International asked that we repeat again the elections. We repeated again the elections. Now, in this part, in this turning point, a lot of my friends told me, stop fighting. Excuse me?
And that's the perseverance.
Excuse me, Hawa? That's the perseverance. A lot of my friends told me, stop fighting. You don't need to go into this. Just leave it to them. I said, no, it's my right. And I have reached to a certain point of experience in Rotary. It's our time. And nobody said that women are not supposed to be leaders. In the States, they are already there as leaders. So they made another complaint, and I won the elections again with a majority of votes, and they complained again. And the Rotary International again said, repeat the elections for the third time. And on the third time, I got all the majority of votes again. So, and this took 2 years. Normally the procedures take 6 months. It took 2 years with me. So to be able to be declared as the first district governor in this. Now, in these 2 years, I really experienced, I cried at night. I lost my friends. I lost a lot of challenge, but I discovered a lot of new people who supported me and who believed in me. And these are the people whom I worked with after that. And this was really a very big test for my leadership and perseverance and my insistence of assuming my role and my rights. Another incident that really tested my mettle was, I'm sorry if I'm going to disappoint anybody, in the middle of my strength and power, I got the cancer. I got cancer in the breast cancer, and I was subject to the chemotherapy treatment. And strange enough, the love of people patted on me, and it was the battle and the fight of survival and of accepting the situation in such a way that everybody was telling me, you are a survivor, you are a fighter, how can you accept this? But I really believed in God, and I believed in the faith, and I took it in a very nice way, and I was happy and I was laughing. I made the operation. My children supported me. I lost all my hair and I lost all my everything, but I did not mind. I used to go out without any wigs or something, and I used to swim, and I used to live my life again. And then all the associations of the cancer, they chose me as a model. And after I got over it, this was in 2006, now 15 years ago. Now I'm a member of many of the cancer associations of women, and I advocate of how a woman can be a survivor and how can she be a struggler in life.
Well done.
And
well
these
done,
were the three
Dr.
incidents
Milan.
that got me.
Well done, Dr. Milan, and thank you for sharing that with us, something really sensitive, and thank you really for sharing that with us. I just have one question,
Yes.
and please,
So,
30
I don't mind.
seconds, if you can answer that for me, is when you were diagnosed, and I'm sure doctors gave you whatever scenarios that they did, having to then juggle between family, yourself, and of course your business. What was your mindset like that allowed you to persevere and continue? What kind of mindset did you have to put around this? Because there's a lot of listeners out there that are really struggling with not just cancer, but other illnesses, other complications. And I find that they struggle more with the mindset than the actual illness that they have been diagnosed with. What did you go through, and how did you overcome that?
For many times, of course, I'm a human. I got the fear of the recurrence. After I got treated and I got all the medicine and I was cancer free, I went through the fear of the recurrence of the cancer, and this happened to many of my friends. They unfortunately passed away.
Yes.
But when I was about depressed and to go into this flow, I pulled up myself and I really went to faith. Faith is the power that really kept me going, because I believed at the end that nobody, we are in our religion, like in all other religions in the world, in God's philosophy, that we are in the world to achieve a certain task, and we die at a certain time that nobody can change. So this is what I put on my mind, that nobody can change the hour that I'm going to die. And this gave me a big faith, a very strong faith in that. And I started looking at things positively very much. I took a lot of spiritual lessons, and everything. And it passed away. And I started advocating for the poor women who are really who came to us crying and they need medicine. And we put all this faith in them, and we helped them
Exactly.
to pass it over.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Mian. And I see that's where your
I
connection is with
just
Alia
need,
as well.
I just need to add one thing. You know, the poor women that got cancer, they don't think, you know, this is very strange in the countries and in the farms. They don't think of the faith as much as they think of their husbands going to divorce them when they lose their hair. You know, this is their very local. Yeah, they think they're going to divorce them or marry another one. So our main thing was to help them how to look beautiful, and this is the mindset for them.
Absolutely. It goes back to the mindset. It's amazing how for every person, what they think about is completely different. And I think that's where your connection is with Alia, is faith. And I think every one of us here tonight will probably resort to that at some point or the other. For those of you who don't know, I mean, for us as from a Muslim community, tonight is actually, a big night for us as well, where it was the night of Ascension. And, it's the journey that many people took. And that faith of what that faith of what we think about is what holds us together in every challenge. So thank you very much for sharing on that. Before I move to my next question, Charlotte, Rayma, Sister Shireen, is there anything that you would like to comment on just very quickly on that particular question that you either associated yourself with in terms of what they've said, both Dr. Mian and Alia, or in terms of a matter that you would like to share quickly with us? Any one of you would like to share that? Sister Shireen?
Thank you, Sister Hawa. You know, if I had to be completely honest, what has really tested my mettle, or as I would say, made me wobble a little bit in my life, I think there are two things for me personally that take time to heal from. And the one is the breakdown of any kind of relationship. So whether that a breakdown of relationship is in your personal capacity or whether it's in business, whether it affects your personal life. I think for me personally, and I mean, we speak from the heart today as leaders, I'm a relationship-based leader. I'm heavily invested in relationships. So for me, the breakdown of any relationship which is permanent, it would take me a while to be able to recover from that in any sphere of my life. I think the second thing that I struggle with is injustice. I struggle to witness injustice. I'm a huge advocate for treating people fairly. And so it can be quite a big distraction in my life. If I see, or, I can't keep quiet. I can't leave it. I can't, lots of people will say to me and have said to me over the course of my career, don't say anything, leave it. I can't. I cannot sit by and watch injustice. And I think because I've been on the receiving end of it, it's very difficult for me. So I would say those are definitely two spaces in my life that would make me wobble. But I would agree there's a common denominator here, if I listen to what the ladies have said, and that is that we all have a very spiritual base that we operate from. The faith in something that is greater than you. That's definitely something that anchors you in your success journey.
You said something about relationships, and that's something that really gets to you. From that perspective, if I could ask you is, have you ever found that you were completely vulnerable to a relationship that might have affected your business in a big manner?
Absolutely. I think the more you respect someone and the more you look up to someone and the more they mentor you, the more vulnerable you become to their opinion of you. And I think, I would describe it as almost crushing. I've had experiences where I really looked up to people in business and really valued their opinions. And then at some point felt that I'd disappointed them, or maybe that they had misled me. And that was quite something to contend with. It didn't take me days to recover from the disappointments of those relationships. It took months to recover from those relationships. So, I think the more you admire someone, the more you care for them, the more vulnerable you become in that relationship. It would be impossible not to care what people that you care about think.
Absolutely. And how do you overcome it? Very quickly, if a person is listening right now and they in a relationship, or they have a business or even a personal relationship, and at the moment they are really down in the dumps from a business perspective and a personal perspective, what one step advice could you give them? Just one thing that you could give them to help them take that first step to recovery.
You know, I can only speak from my point of view, Sister Hawa, and that is that when I'm going through something that is challenging for me, I become very insular. I remove myself from the situation and I try to remove myself from the emotional side of it. I think I've become better with that over time, and I become quite analytical and I rationalize. So that's my way of dealing with it. And I also just want to say, I think it takes time, you know, like anything in life, when you've had disappointment pass through you, don't try and rush through it or deny it or pretend that it didn't happen. Allow it to pass through you and deal with those emotions, and, you know, and find your own way forward in your own time. I think, you know, rushing through processes is probably one of my biggest critiques in life, is that people try to rush through things. And I would just say, slow down, you know, slow down and be honest with yourself and work through what you need to work through. But for me, I do that very much in a private space. So, you know, to each his own. Some people feel very comfortable sharing, and I don't. I like to deal with everything in a very internal way. And then when I feel that I have my footing again, then I can engage. But, you know, that is very personal.
Thank you, Sister Shireen. And I know we're putting you on the spot, especially being a personal person that you are. We're putting you on the spot to really dig down inside. But thank you very much for sharing that. Rahima and Charlotte, I'd like to go to you right now. But, you know, what I'd like to ask you is, there's a saying that goes, and a person by the name of Alan Watts says this, and he says, you're under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago. Yeah. So I'd like you to tell me about a time when you made a decision in either your career or your business or your life that turned out to either be a mistake or even a huge success. And has that changed you as a person? Has that changed you as an individual as to how you started behaving with others and with yourself? So if I can just repeat that, is I'd like you to tell me about a decision that you have made that either was a mistake in either your business or career, and has that mistake actually changed you as a person? So Rahima, let's go with you first.
Well, I got like a lifetime of mistakes, so one has to sit back and reflect on which mistake. I want to link it to the previous conversation. It's not a mistake, but I think that the one area that comes up for me is mental health care, and the lack of attention that's been paid to mental health care. And so I think the mistake that I made was in career choices. First, you know, agreeing to going into, I always laugh and say, yeah, I was meant to be an accountant. And so it was never going to work out, right? For whatever reasons that was. Yeah, I know. I get that all the time. The laughter. I mean, I'd have been a brilliant accountant.
I'm
guys.
sorry. Knowing you, yes. Yeah.
My first job I had was with Deloitte, actually. And I remember one of the HR personnel was trying to get me into a different space. And in my mind, I'd settled into the fact that this is what I needed to do, right? And so I couldn't see myself doing anything people-oriented, because she was like, you do great with people. I'm like, me, people, never. But fast forward to years later, 23, and I talked about curiosity earlier on. And so personality type of curiosity means that you're willing to explore a lot of things. And when you're willing to explore a lot of things, you're going to take on a lot of things, because curiosity has no bounds. It's got no boundaries. And so this willingness to take on a lot of things brings on a lot of responsibilities on your head, whether it is by design or by mistake. And if you're young, you're actually not navigating that with the right kind of mechanisms and coping skills and just self-emotional coping capacity. So I think for me, the first mistake in my life was taking on too many things at an early age. I mean, I became what I call a mother to teenagers at the age of 23 for a number of reasons. At the same time, juggling, a very fast track career in the accounting profession and doing board exams, and just being in a space of too much. in a world where I take you back, I always say that, I like taking you back to stories of influence. And my story of influence is being in high school and hearing the Beijing Declaration and being a young woman who's now hearing about the fact that there's this declaration and therefore the world of possibilities for women is infinite. And in my curious mind, imagining what this possibility of infinite opportunity is for women and feeling that I need to be out there and making things happen, but not being ready for what making it happen requires, and suffering burnout at the age of 23 in a fast-paced banking environment in Korea, where mental health care was seen more as a failure, and mental health care was seen as you just not coping in the system and therefore not being good enough. For a curious person who wants to explore stuff and thrives on the notion of acceptance and thrives on the notion of belonging and being in this elitist club that you wanted to be in because it's exclusionary at this point in time, and therefore your measure of success is defined by where you're participating, how you're participating, and the accolades that the world throws at you. All of a sudden, not being able to function in that place becomes debilitating. But as you become older, you start to acknowledge the choices that you have made that have put you in those situations. But at that point in time, couldn't recognize them as choices because you kind of think that the world has lent you or has given you or has played these cards for you. So this inability to distinguish my own agency, capabilities, but limitations and boundaries from a young age, I think was the first point of distress. And I think the first mistake that I made was that not early on in life, taking on a journey of self-development, self-awareness, self-consciousness, self-boundaries, also being a middle child, middle child syndrome. Everybody else must be satisfied first, create.
It does exist, right, Rahima? Middle child syndrome?
Right? It's real. No, shame, I claim it, it's real. And I think in that, appreciating the lack of boundary setting is the first biggest mistake that I made. And I think when you talk about mistakes, must also talk about how we navigate them. So I did have a depressive episode, and back at that time, significant implications. Medical aids would teach you differently. There were certain things that were excluded all of a sudden from your healthcare, which meant that would impact even your insurance benefit, which would then, there's a stigma. You walking through the halls of the bank, and I remember like these bosses, when I say bosses, because there were males in this environment, and they'd make comments like, did you take your happy pills today? Are you coping? Are you seeing things today? And these are people in places of authority, and you are occupying them also as one of the only young Black women in this environment. So just also perpetuating that, navigating that for me was really through an amazing GP who was able to identify depression for what it was, and connecting me to an amazing psychologist who was able to walk a journey. And that was my first journey of consciousness, self-awareness, and starting to understand the me that was driving this engine of whatever else it is that I wanted to be.
So
but
it's
also
okay to
realizing
ask
maybe
for that
15,
help,
20 years
Rahima.
on.
So sorry to
It's
interrupt you. So
essential.
it's okay
It's
to ask for that help. Yeah.
It's essential.
So for those that are
essential.
out there, when you
And
say
we're
it's
not normal.
essential, for those, sorry, we seem to be cutting a little bit, but for those of you that are out there and are considering to say, I'm struggling, I need help, what do I actually do? Would you say that why do we as women, and I say this particularly women, and I know a lot of men do this as well, but because today is International Women's Day, we're going to talk about this, is why particularly women hold back. What made you hold back before you went? Or did you hold back?
I did hold back, but I didn't know the signals and the symptoms. But I also come from a very strong, well-rounded educational background, and therefore I was exposed to psychologists from high school. So the notion of asking for help was not foreign to me, but it was a stigma to reach out for that help. And so the knowledge of the help being there is not the barrier, but the implications of how you are treated, because you raise your hand and you say, I'm not okay, in a world and society that says you've been asking as women to participate, you've been asking to belong. And furthermore, by being the first woman in that space, you automatically do not represent yourself, you represent all the other women. And therefore, admitting and acknowledging that it's not okay for you and that you are not coping is almost a validation of why other women should not be considered. That's tremendous pressure to have on individuals. And I think there are many spaces where in 2021, we're still finding first woman here, first woman there, but we haven't created the safe environments and ecosystems for women to thrive and fail safely. The notion is that you must not just be the first, but you must be excellent. And that normal human function of failure has been taken away as a growth and development, natural, a natural journey or progression of success. And therefore, we learn to put up facades. We learn to be perfect and, give the way. But we then internalize all these things going on.
Yeah.
And so for women out there, and if you're young in your career, I think growing up in Botswana, I always reference my Botswana upbringing, because growing up and being part of a Deloitte community, the first thing they did was get you a mentor. First thing they did was get you a coach. So even in my mind, there was a sense of there's something not right in this environment. But also appreciating that a lot of women in that time, spoken 20 years ago, were also finding their way. So they don't necessarily have time to coach you and deal with the drama of being the first person in that space as well. So I think there's a need
So in 30 minutes to conclude your section, just in 30 minutes to conclude, Rahima, if I can just ask you in 30 seconds, sorry, just to conclude, if you had to give that advice now to anybody out there, when anyone wants to get you a coach or when anyone wants to help you in 30 seconds, what would you say?
If anybody, so but are you saying if you want to get a coach or if you're an individual going through this situation?
Yes.
If you're
an individual going through the situation,
go to your GP, because they're a rich reference source. Your GP will give you either a psychologist, have a session, or a counselor, or go to, if you're in a large corporation, you can typically call the advisory care line. If you're an individual entrepreneur, go to your church, go to your place of worship, find safe places where there are people who are trained to listen. And sometimes all it takes is having a sounding board. I currently pay somebody just to be a sounding board. Just listen to safely.
Okay,
Allow me
I'm available.
speak,
Yeah, I'm
and
available.
to air what
I'm available.
Yes, you are. You're amazing.
Thanks, Rahima. Thank you. And I'm sorry I have to cut you. I can go on just listening to you, but I also want to hear from Charlotte in terms of, firstly, just a few seconds on comment on what you've heard from Rahima. But more importantly, let's go back to telling me about that decision that you made that could have been a mistake. And how has that changed you as a person? How has it changed you?
Well, firstly, I want to just say to Rahima that I can completely relate. I've actually been very open and honest about my past over the last 2 years, in fact. I don't know if you know that I started a foundation, the Women of Stature Foundation, it was started with the intention to help women who are going and struggling through emotional barriers that is stopping them from moving forward in life. And the reason I did this is based on what you are saying, Rahima, is that mental wellness or mental illness, there is a stigma attached to it, and we ignore the signs. We ignore it because we're afraid of how other people will react. So we tend to live with a mental illness for a lot longer than what we should, because it gets to critical proportions. And I had that in my own life, Rahima, so that's why I want to say I can totally relate, that it got to critical proportions that even a psychologist couldn't help me because I had gone well beyond that, almost like that precipice. And so, you know, when you're talking about mental wellness, and I think today, especially in the world we're living in today, and what we have gone through as a world society, mental wellness is now, as far as I'm concerned, the most important discussion that we should be having as a community, because it affects everything else that you do. It affects all your relationships. So from making a decision, if you say, what decision did I make, right or wrong? I guess it's that I waited too long. I didn't realize that I was almost like beyond help. And I think if I can be of any support to anybody and give advice, is that the minute you start noticing that your behavior is changing, that you're not sleeping well, that you're not responding very well, that you are confused. I don't know about you, Rahima, but I got to a point where I was so confused that sitting in front of my desk, sitting in the, basically in the company of people, that I couldn't actually respond. That I felt everything inside of me was slowing down, and I was responding so confused and so, muddled in my own mind. I couldn't decipher my work. I would look at my laptop or my computer, and I couldn't decipher a sentence. I found it difficult to do the smallest of chores in my home. And then I started to realize more and more, but why is it that I'm not performing the way I used to perform? And what started happening to me as well is, in my job situation, I was fearful that people would notice that I'm not okay. And I was fearful that I was going to lose my job. So having that constant fear of, does somebody, or are they noticing that I'm not okay, and I'm fearing my job loss, or being told that I'm now going to not be able to perform in that job anymore. So all of those emotions start to play in yourself, and you start to then unravel. And when it's that unraveling that happens, so I think for me, I will be the first to admit that I made a lot of mistakes in my life. I made choices. I trusted people. That was something that Shireen was saying as well. You trust somebody, you build a relationship, and that relationship, the trust is broken because the person doesn't honor the fact that you had a trusting relationship, and that's disappointing. So I think there's also the mistakes I made was that I have trusted too easily, because I take people at face value. And unfortunately, as you get older and as you become more accomplished in what it is that you're doing, and you become wiser, with age comes wisdom, you then start to realize that you can only trust the person as far as you see them, but you need to build a relationship over a period of time, and it takes time. And I think that, again, is the mistake that I used to make, that I used to jump into something far too quickly. And Shireen also pointed that out. People want to get through it quickly. And I've also realized that you cannot do that. If anything is going to be sustainable, you have to give it time. Make sure it's all working. Make sure you've got all the nuts and the bolts in the right place. And it's pretty simple. It's like the engine of a car. If you don't have all the nuts and the bolts and the plugs and you're putting petrol into the right tank, it's not going to work properly. So I think that to me is something that the mistakes I've made has been rushing into it, not acknowledging that I had a mental health issue, not coming forward soon enough. And then also the guilt, walking with guilt as a mother. And I think a lot of us are mothers here on this panel tonight, that you very often find yourself that you're walking with guilt. Have I done the best for my children? Have I been the mother that I was meant to be? When you get to a place where your life has been about
fantastic
business,
nuggets that you have basically that you've been sharing there, and I think those three important things that you've mentioned are really important. Firstly, watch out for the signs, and Charlotte has mentioned a lot of signs, and sometimes we see these signs as women, but we don't acknowledge it. We put it aside and we say everything is okay, because you know what, we so focused in terms of our work and our business, and this is why we've achieved what we have achieved, but we also don't realize that it does affect us and it affects our business later. So Charlotte, thank you. Those nuggets are absolutely fantastic, those three. I'm sorry I'm cutting you short a little bit. We almost in 10 minutes to our closing, and I've got two important questions I'd like to raise just to remind some of the listeners that are out there. I see some of the comments are coming in, some great comments. Thank you very much. I also want to remind you that if you have a burning question, you've got the next 8 minutes if you'd like to ask that question. But I'm going to go through very quickly. I would like in 30 seconds, and I know I'm not giving you enough time, ladies, on this one, but this is one I want you to think about very quickly and answer instinctively. What is coming from your heart, from an instinct? And the question actually is that what would you be left, what would be left of you if someone took away everyone that you know, and someone took away everything that you own? What would you be left with in terms of you? And let's see who's ready to answer. Otherwise, I put you on the spot.
Can you repeat the question, please, Hawa?
Here we
Can you repeat the question? Yeah. Can you repeat the question?
What would be left of you if someone took away everyone you know and or everything you own? What would be left of you if that was taken away? So, Alia, let's go with you. I see you've dying to answer that question, and then Dr. Mian.
I think everything, actually, because I would be around. So my legacy, I think, is more of what comes from inside me, and that remains essentially. So that's my response.
Love it. I love that. And this is why you are who you are, right? It's because what comes from inside of you. Thank you, Alia. Dr. Mian. What would be left of you?
You know how I live with the motto that I do not expect from people. I don't have any expectations from people. I give. So if everybody took away what I earn or what I have, still I will be having love for people, because this is the way I'm a giver.
MashaAllah. Well done. Thank you, Dr. Mian. And at the end of the day, this is why you are the women that you are, right? So thank you. Charlotte?
Thank you.
Really good. All right. So I would say my dignity. That is what I would be left with. Never ever to think that I've done everything I possibly can to be the person that people would look up to. So dignity is what I would be left with.
Love it. Thank you, Charlotte. Reema.
Honestly, I think immediately you said, I thought fear would be replaced by action. One of my biggest, I think the things that drives me is that what I don't do is based on fear. And certain experiences in this world take away fear completely. And once fear is taken away, for me, it will be action, but action towards eternalizing memory. I think we're all here for a reason. And I'd find some way, I'd move towards action, but I know immediately it would be, how can I make sure that the memory of these people and the purpose of their existence doesn't live on in some way? I'd create something.
I
can just see that. I'd create some kind of way of continuing their legacy.
Nice. I really love that. Thank you very much. And that resonates so well with me. I mean, those of you who know my story, going through so many losses, both in business and in my personal life, that memory is what really resonated with me. And I think, yes, you're right. I'm human and I'm going to remove that mask. It didn't come immediately. And everything that you are saying, and all of you ladies that are so powerful, it did not come to me immediately. It took time. So those of you that are listening, we're going through a period of life where we're losing loved ones, we're losing business, we're losing money, we're losing everything that most of us have. But look back, go through the process, and then understand that you can get through this by going through the memories of what you have and rebuilding that. Shireen, on your side.
You know, for me, it's interesting because I can take the what if out of that sentence and say, I have lost love, I have lost money, I have lost homes, I have lost so much in my life. But I think the thing that really sustained me through it all when I felt like I'd lost so much is what is resident in me today, which is the inward knowing that everything is going to be okay. Regardless of circumstance, that spirit within you that just knows everything is going to be okay. So I would like to say, you know, regardless of the losses and the tragedies of life, I agree with Alia. You know, what is on the inside is what you're left with. And I ultimately think that is what is the most important. It will carry you through.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you so much, Sister Shireen, for sharing that as well. And you see the commonality here. You have some amazing, powerful women in business. You have powerful women in their own right, in their home and in their careers. But you know what? We are vulnerable to be able to have feelings and still be left with so much more that we are able to give. And that's what makes us who we really are. Ladies, we have about 3 minutes. And in this 3 minutes, very quickly, so that gives you just about 20 seconds each, I'd like you to be able to tell me, the last question is, tonight you have exposure to people that are listening to you. You have a platform to give them a great bit of nuggets and let them learn from you. If you had to give them just two nuggets that have pulled you through everything in your career, what would those two nuggets actually be for you? And we have a first hand going up. Alia, you look like you're ready to go.
Thank you. I think very simple. Every action that we take comes out of fear or out of love. Yes. Every action that you take must come out of love. The one coming out of fear will be negative. And that's essentially down to everything what I was talking about earlier. As a giver, you are never empty. An empty bucket cannot give. You're always full of love. If you're full of love, you give, and you're still not empty.
Love it. Love it. Thank you very much. Rahima.
The sun shines. If it's not shining where you are, if the sun is not, oh, sorry, I keep doing that every single day. There's sunshine. If it's not shining where you are, it's behind a cloud, but it's present. It rises every single morning. So my mantra is to call everybody and everything sunshine. It lights from within. It burns bright. It never goes away, and it's guaranteed every single day. The sun is going to shine.
Love it. Thank you, Rahima. Sister Shireen.
Two things for me that are just not, you can't compromise with is your relationship with God, or my relationship with God undeniably has carried me through everything and to every success in my life. I give him all the glory. And second of all, I'd like to say intention. Keep your heart's attitude right and do things with the right heart intention, because works and deeds in themselves are quite futile if your intention is not in the right place. So keep a pure heart and approach things for the right reason. And I think success takes care of itself.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sister Shireen. And I think niyyah, as what we would say in Arabic, niyyah and, intention is one thing. So absolutely. Thank you. Dr. Vian.
I think, Hawa, I really believe in the belief in oneself. If you have a belief and confidence confidence, that you can get things done, and you will do it. Yes, I can. You will get things done very easily. And also the persistence. You have to persist. You have to have a great passion and persistence in what you're doing. Now, the positive thoughts are very important. We cannot say no, we can't do the things from the beginning. We have to have a positive thought, a belief in what we're doing, and persistence to what we have to do, and keep on following and never give up.
Fantastic. So remove those self-limiting beliefs that you have, get that out of the way. And based on that, ladies, you have done a phenomenal job. We've just hit about, it's now 8:59. I'd now like to be able to just close off after the evening. Charlotte, I'm not sure. I did cover you. No, not your quick nuggets. I'm so sorry. Just quickly, we on 8:59. So just 30 seconds to your nuggets. I apologize.
All right. So I can just leave you with this one thought, and that is, if you can dream it, you can do it. Don't ever stop dreaming. And then also try to fill your life with as much laughter and joy, because laughter is the best medicine.
I love that. I love that. And those of you who knows my life and my husband, Abdul Rashid, those of you who know him, that's why I think I look the way I do, is because of his laughter and his support all the time. He's always giggling and laughing. So Charlotte, thank you very much for that advice. To our audience, thank you very much for listening in. I hope that we were able to remove a little bit of that mask, not enough time to remove more of the mask, but to be able to give you the insight of some of these powerful women that are in business, who are in their careers, but yet we are vulnerable, yet we are human, and yet, and I put this out there, yet we are able to remove the mask and show you who we truly are. We have our fears, we have our anger burst, we have our frustrations, we have our depression, we have our anxiety, but even through all of that, we can and juggle it all. And I always say this, women can have it all, provided that you are willing to negotiate. Have a negotiable tray and have a non-negotiable tray. Negotiate what you can in life, and whatever you're not willing to negotiate, stand your ground and move forward. Ladies, thank you very much for your time. It was an honor to have you. Thank you to the listeners. Thank you to Salam Media. This video will be carrying on over. Please do follow. Please do tweet about your events, and please do share the video as you have it. Ladies, thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And it was lovely to have you. Bye-bye. And all the best.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Hawa. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. So those still listening in,